everyone, Jules here from Tarot Adventures with Jules. I am so thrilled to be hosting a live today with Joseph from the Inner Witch Oracle and Inner Witch Tarot, all practical magic themed. These decks are so special. And Joseph actually has a fabulous 3-deck Kickstarter on right now that features the Witch's Grimoire Oracle Collection. It is such a fantastic grouping of decks, and I cannot wait to talk to him about them in more detail. In addition to his decks, Joseph also has a fabulous website and Patreon with all kinds of altar items and witchcraft items and candles and all kinds of fabulousness. So we'll touch base on that in a little bit too. So I'm just gonna send a invite to Joseph here. So exciting. Just a moment. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Fabulous. I am so excited to chat with you today. This is amazing. We've been talking about this for ages, and I'm so thrilled that we are making it happen. This is amazing. I just did a little intro and was telling everyone that you're the creator of the incredible Inner Witch Oracle and Inner Witch Tarot, which are loosely based around practical magic. I say loosely, that's more with a tarot, but the oracle is very much celebratory of practical magic, which is so fabulous. And you currently have the the Witch's Grimoire Oracle Collection on Kickstarter, which is made up of, I believe, 3 decks. And I would love to chat with you about that more. I know there's 3 parts. There's an herbology and garden magic deck. There's a gemstone and crystal magic deck and a fauna and familiar magic deck. So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about each of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea came, I wanted to make like an herb deck. It's something that I was searching for because the way I create my decks is something that's not available that I'm looking for. I need to create.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was looking for some kind of like witchy reference, magical, like with all the like connections all right there. And so it started with the herbology deck. And as I was like listing, I do like a spreadsheet to make my like cards and everything. So I'm like listing, and I had like a ton of like things. And I'm like, oh my God, how can I separate this? And I'm like, well, what if I like decided to do like different decks and make it kind of like a collection? Because with witchcraft and magic, there's more than just herbs and plants and flowers, you know?
Absolutely.
So it kind of like expanded, and I followed the inspiration and the creativity train, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love that each of the decks has its own separate theme. And I was looking at the Kickstarter earlier. I love how you describe it too. A magical set of decks that will transport you to a world of enchantment and wonder that looks like it was taken from a witch's book of shadows. Like the aesthetic of these decks is so special because it feels almost like pulling out a big I don't know, I'm thinking like Hocus Pocus or something like that. You know, they have a huge grimoire and it has that same kind of historical, worked for generations, a passing down of history and tradition and witchcraft. And like the pages, like the cards look kind of distressed and everything has this very like steeped in history and tradition aesthetic to it. So I love that so much. So how did you come up with that concept? Like, was that something that was clear from the get-go, or did that evolve as you were creating the cards, or what was that process like for you?
As I was creating the cards, it kind of like happened simultaneously because I was digitizing my book of shadows because I made like pages and stuff everywhere, and I just wanted easy reference for when I'm like teaching things on my Patreon and like posting information, you know, so I wanted like a quick, easy reference. So I was digitizing that, and then I'm like, oh, so this is my like plant section, and here's my like my crystals, and these are like animals. And then so I was like, oh, okay. You know, it just kind of like happened. And within the Kickstarter description, I actually mentioned that if this is as successful as it already is, I have plans to do further collections within the grimoire world.
Oh, I love that so much. So if you're okay with sharing, what are some of the ideas that you're looking at exploring in that context?
So I want to stick with the power of 3. I don't know, it's just very prominent in these decks for some reason. I mean, it's on the 21st, 2 plus 1 is 3. There's 3 decks. So I was thinking of hopefully doing 3 collections of 3 decks.
Ooh,
So
I love that.
I have planned like a zodiac and like timing astrology themed one.
Ooh, I
Um,
love that.
do like kitchen magic. I want to do like symbology and like ritualistic things.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to incorporate like runes and like witch runes. And yeah, so I mean, I have a couple ideas.
Yeah. Oh, that's all
I
so
mean,
exciting. And that fills
the whole
gaps. Like,
point is to like have this knowledge and stuff easily accessible. And like, I
yeah.
feel like this is like the perfect way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that there's so many different components and elements that you can incorporate into your practice. Like I've started incorporating a lot of astrology into my tarot, and it fleshes everything out and adds an
Mhm.
extra layer of understanding and reference to the practice, which keeps it interesting and keeps it magical and engaging, right? Like, 'cause when you do something for a really long time, it's not that it gets boring, but it kind of like you're so familiar with it, having that spark of inspiration of something new, another element to add in is super exciting. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh, I love that so much. That's
That's
fantastic.
why I've actually tried. I have like some sample cards that I printed out, but
Ooh,
I don't know if you can see. I might have to
yeah,
actually lighten the background so things are better.
yeah,
But it's like there's so much more than just like keywords and like a main
yeah,
phrase. Like it tells you like you can activate like fire, you can dive
yeah,
in. You know what I mean? So like
yeah.
you're saying the different aspects add so much more depth to a reading and to messages.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was further along in my notes, but I noticed as I was going through that you have a custom sigil that you had created that you were including on the cards. So I'd love to hear more about that because I noticed that there was an element symbol there and there was an astrology symbol, and like you've included, I think when you wrote up, each deck has 48 cards and they contain the name and title, keyword, elemental connections, astrological associations, and planetary correspondences, along with a message of guidance and connection and magical elements like that. There's so much in that one card, which is so fabulous.
There's also an affirmation for every card in the guidebook.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I love that so much because it's so lovely to have a guidebook, but it's also wonderful when you can pull a card and everything is there for you, you know? Like it's not overpowering the visuals of the deck, which I think is really great. Like that's still front and center, but I love that there's so many different key reference points in each of
Yeah.
the cards. Like that's fantastic. Yeah.
So you were speaking of my sigil,
Yeah,
and you can kind of see it. I've
yeah,
put it
yeah.
in every single card. This actually happened like 6 months, eight, no, God, it's been, I can't keep track of time, like over a year that
One
I got.
time. I mean, geez, like I can't believe
But
we're already near the end of July.
right.
Like, how did that happen?
So with the prominence of like all the fake decks
Yeah,
and everything,
yeah,
I was like, I'm gonna make like a protection empowerment kind of like sigil that
yeah.
I can incorporate on my work more than just my logo. And so I utilized like the words grounded by the moon and like broke everything down and created a sigil out of the letters. And so
Oh,
now I put
amazing.
it like on my decks as like an extra kind of like precaution and kind of also like a
Oh,
thorns to you if you kind of
yeah,
knock this off, you know? So it also is like a nod to Rider White. So
yeah,
I feel
that's
it gives it even
amazing.
more of a magical component.
Yeah, I love that it functions as like a protective element because like fraudulent decks have been such an issue within the tarot community. Like it breaks my heart every time I see a creator post about their work being stolen. Like it's so rampant now. Not only that, but also people basically taking over account names and pretending to be practitioners. Like it's such a huge issue in our community, unfortunately. And I love that you've created something as kind of a magical protection to help bolster your work. That's beautiful. And I think you had also mentioned that you have a certificate of authenticity that you're now releasing with the decks. Is that going to be with just this collection or with everything going forward?
That's going to be every single thing, every deck I create
Uh,
going forward. It's
yeah, that's
just
such a good idea.
added not only like protection element, you know,
Yeah,
of security, but also like to give those supporters and customers like that sense of security that they're buying something genuine, they're
yeah,
supporting the real creator, you know? And like,
Absolutely.
it is like a lot of extra work. It's going to cost more
Mhm.
money, but it's in
Yeah.
the end, it benefits everyone in the process.
Absolutely. I love that idea so much because it's often hard to tell, especially let's say you're coming to tarot new
Hmm.
and you're not as familiar with price points for indie decks versus mass market, or you're accessing Amazon to try and find something, but even there, like, is it a mass market legitimate deck? Is it something that's been ripped off? Like, it's so hard to know because there's a lot of companies that seem legitimate but are not, and are putting things on places like Walmart and Amazon and everything
I
else. I mean,
find that my Inner Witch Oracle's even on Walmart, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
yeah, it's ridiculous. And like my go-to would be go directly to the creator whenever possible, or source them from a verified store. Like, I love Calling Corners in Nova Scotia. In Truro, they carry amazing decks, lots of indie decks, lots of mass market, but they're legitimate and above board. Like, Sarah does her research and makes sure that she's sourcing her decks properly. So I shop there with confidence because I know that she's very attentive about where she's
Hmm.
sourcing her decks from, right? But having that certificate of authenticity is just one more way to um, indicate the authenticity of the decks for people that are buying them, and to create that sense of ease and comfort around, authenticity for sure.
And that's
Yeah, I have,
and I try to go like above and beyond
yeah,
with like my box designs, like a hard box. Is it
yep,
foiled? Like,
yeah,
are the cards edged? Like, it's all these like
yeah,
little things. I'm like, so is your
yeah,
deck edged? Does your deck have like a hard box? Did it come with a guidebook? Does like
yeah. All those elements, and you do put so much care into everything that you create. Like, I'm just looking at I mean, the Inner Witch Oracle was the first one, which is so amazing, but like the Inner Witch Tarot, like this box, like with the foil and the finishing and like the hard edges, and you even have the ribbon for removing the cards with more ease. Like, I love that, like all of the details. And there's a beautiful design on the inside of the box too, with all of the foil finish. Like, you really don't skimp when it comes to the details that you pour into your decks. And I love, like with this one, we'll get back to the Kickstarter, I promise. I just want to talk about how fabulous this is, because I mean, this guidebook is hefty and there's a lot of really amazing information in here, and everything is full color and there's all of these elements. And with this particular deck, you also have all the Inner Witch info for all the different elementals, because I know, like for me, I'm really familiar with astrological symbols, but the element symbols I constantly have to look up because I'm so used to working with elements, but the reference points, like the symbols. So this has been so amazing to be able to have this as a reference point. And you include so many spreads in your deck boxes too, like not just in the guidebook, but like as an extra card, which is so lovely. And I know adding extra cards is, it adds extra cost to the full deck itself. So, I really appreciate that you've added that care. And you've got this extra little booklet of spreads, which is
I wonder
incredible.
who did that.
And
Yeah.
then, what's that?
I wonder who did those spreads.
Oh, yeah,
and and then I'd have your the challenge that you did for me. I include with every tarot order.
that's amazing. Oh, I'm so honored. I had so much fun putting it together, and it was so lovely to collaborate with you. It was super fun. Yeah, I was so honored to be asked because I respect your work so much, and it was just so fun to collaborate. And yeah, so thank you for that. Um, I'm going to continue to ramble on like a fangirl here, but I just like, there's so many elements here that I love so much. Like, you've got all of the sabbats
Ah,
too, and I love that you have the handy wheel at the top too, because I was like, oh, trying to like tax my brain. I'm like, I know the order, but it's kind of like when I first started doing tarot, trying to remember the sequencing of like the major arcana and all the
yeah.
minor arcana. And like, but you have the wheel, and it's nicely color coded, so you can follow along, even if you're like, oh, does Impala come before or after Sarah, right? Like, especially if you're new to it, it's really lovely. And then the new moon and full moon cards, and like just the care that has gone into all of this. Like, the decks are so beautifully edged, the holographic finish, and it's just like, I have so much respect for all the care that you put into your work. Like, it's very evident and very, very lovely. So let's talk a little bit about the Kickstarter and the details from that, because I know the Herbology and Garden Magic focuses on magical properties and correspondences of herbs. The Gemstone and Crystal Magic focuses on magical properties of gemstones and crystals. And then the Fauna and Familiar Magic focuses and celebrates on the bonds that you have with animals and familiars. So yeah, can we maybe take a quick look at each of those decks and talk about your inspiration and how you kind of divvied everything up in terms of the focus of each deck?
Yeah, so honestly, I kind of broke down what I thought was most accessible and usable within each deck.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just like a random herb that like a few people have heard of, or that you have to like order from another country, or like, you know, so I wanted it to be very accessible with this knowledge and also usable. So like with the cards, I have all the elemental aspects and the zodiacs and the planetary aspects to help utilize those for like spell work and like rituals and like focused like meditations and things. And I wanted it to kind of have a big variety of what it covers and not just like taking action all the time and doing stuff. There's going to be some like healing work in there. There's going to be some like grounding stuff. I also incorporated one elemental card, or not what, like all elements in each deck. The sun and the moon in each deck. So like there's a lot that you can utilize within each deck and all together.
Oh, that's so fabulous. So how would you recommend incorporating the decks together? Like, I mean, I'm sure, I know you always provide so many amazing spreads, so I'm sure that there's, and I think you had mentioned too that there was going to be some spreads included with each of the decks. And maybe that was an add-on or a stretch goal. Yeah,
the stretch goal we just unlocked. There's going to be 3 added spreads to each deck, like spread cards.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I made notes and I needed to reference. Yeah, because the stretch goals that you've unlocked so far are gold foil effects and spot UV elements and gilding on the boxes, a fully enhanced guidebook with color, thicker pages, finishing, 3 spread cards with each deck, mixed stone set, and a magical plant markers, correct? Is that everything?
Yes,
yeah, that's a lot.
The deck also has an antique gold foil effect it's going to have.
Oh, that's so gorgeous. That just adds to the whole feel of it being like a grimoire and like the history and the passing down, and but make it fancy, right? Like I love like all the different little elements, right? Like even just the finish of the boxes. I mean, this is beautiful in and of itself, and then you move it and it sparkles and it just makes it so much.
I actually decided after I made this deck that this is what I wanted to do going forward for all my decks, was the book style box.
Yeah.
So all 3 of these decks will have that book style opening with the pull-out ribbon, and they're all going to have like the pentacle on every deck is going to be that gold foil, and then there's spot UV wherever the like animals or crystals or the card samples. So it's going to be very pretty. I already can, like, imagine it. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I had the like random idea last minute. I was like, well, it's a box set. Like, let's make like a box sleeve, like, you know, because like we buy books, because they're supposed to be like little books kind of, and like a book box that comes in a sleeve, you know. So I messaged my printer and they're like, oh yeah, we can totally do it. They sent me like a file and I was working on it. So, yeah,
that's so fantastic. I love that idea. I mean, I'm a lifelong bookworm, and the whole idea of like being in a library just like makes me feel so relaxed and content and at home. Like I spent my childhood in a library, so like that whole idea of bringing that aesthetic to tarot and oracle decks, just, oh, that's so lovely. That's like pure comfort. I love that so much. And you have some yet to be unlocked stretch goals as well, right? Like there's a beautiful, I have the wooden card holder that you have for the single card. Oh my God,
sample
beautiful.
For the 3 cards.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Wow, I love all the different elements you've included. That's stunning.
Include every deck. So there's the herbs, the animals, and the crystals.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I love that you have the moon cycles at the bottom too. That's stunning. So that's the next
that's the next goal
to be unlocked. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, let's push for that.
I know,
beautiful.
I'm like, let's go. I want it so bad.
I know what you mean. Yeah, because I have this one and it's absolutely beautiful. Like you've got all the elements, and as above, as with as so within, so without the soul, so below, as above, as within the universe. Like it's beautiful in the hands and the elements, and then you even engraved the back. Like that's so lovely.
I
It's
originally designed like a single and a 3-card holder for this campaign, but I was like, I
yeah,
already have a single card
yeah,
holder. I don't need to do another. So I just
no, it's beautiful. Yeah, that's such a good idea, because why reinvent the wheel? You've already got something that's absolutely beautiful. And I think that's one of the add-ons that you can add to the campaign, right? Yeah, that's great, because there were some add-ons.
When I do my Kickstarters or planning all my like goals and like add-ons and stuff, as you can see, I like try to order a sample, like a physical sample, because like I said, I take so much pride in what I put out and the quality. I can't see myself spending all this money for these people who are supporting me and believing in me to just see a picture of something online. Okay, that looks fine. Sure.
Yeah. You need to hold it in your hand and make sure that it's going to be exactly what you want it to be. Yeah, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, yes, and I wanted to touch on the journals as well, because that is so incredible. Those are part of the add-ons that you can include, correct?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, yeah, because there's some add-ons. There's single grimoire decks. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's gorgeous.
So each page has like a magical mantra and like the zodiac and the planetary aspect. And then on this side it has the moon, the day, your spread name, your questions, draw spread. No, I don't know. I designed this whole thing. I was like, it's perfect.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And I love that you approach everything from the perspective of like, this is what I'm looking for and I haven't been able to find it, so I'm going to create it. Because I find like I create things so much from that space as well. Like, what is it that I can't find, that I'm missing, that I need? And you're not just filling a gap for yourself, but you're filling it for other people as well. And that's so lovely. Those are gorgeous. And I love that the edging is, I think, in gold, if I saw that properly, gilded. Yeah. Those are so pretty. Oh my gosh, and the foil on the pentacle too.
These are also embossed.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Those
I feel
are
like
so
I'm
fancy.
heavily undercharging for this, but whatever.
Yeah, no kidding. Because those are vegan leather, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they're so fancy. That's beautiful. Yeah, because that's one of the add-ons. Single grimoire decks, the Inner Witch Oracle, the enamel pins, the single wooden card holder, potentially the 3-card holder as well. I think there was also some worry stones and the celestial magic towers as well, right? Like, you have all the things. It's beautiful. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's stunning.
And there's also black and silver, so it's like opposite. And the set.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And then I have, of course, wraps.
Yes. Oh my gosh, those are beautiful. That was the next thing I was going to ask you about, actually. Those are so fantastic for travel, for keeping decks safe, and also for having somewhere to lay out your cards.
My sigil is there.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. And is that like a green tone?
Yeah, this is the blue.
Okay.
This is the green.
Oh, amazing.
And then we have brown.
Oh, those are gorgeous. They're so pretty. I know what you mean. That tower needs to be in my life too. It's beautiful. Yes. Oh, that's so gorgeous. I love that so much. Yeah, there's so many fun elements to add on, and stretch goals and everything else. Like, you're very generous with what you offer. Yeah, because I had written here as add-ons. The decks include an invocation card, which is so lovely. Then add-ons, they're the vegan leather divination journals, the 3 colors that you just showed, which are all so beautiful. So how did you pick the colors? Because they're perfect. Did you pick them to correspond with the boxes for each of the decks? Yeah,
so each of
that's
the
beautiful.
decks have different backs.
Oh, cool.
So like the brown is the crystal, which will go with the brown book.
Yeah.
And the brown wrap.
Oh, that's such a lovely combo. Wow.
And then the green, 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 and blue. But I originally started with the green because like herbology, and then I'm like, oh, brown because of like the ground and rocks and stuff. Yeah. But I was a little torn for the animals. I was gonna go like with a red or an orange, but I decided I'm gonna hold off on that color for the kitchen magic deck.
Ooh. Oh yes, yes, please. That sounds amazing. Oh, that's so lovely. So how did you choose which elements to include? Like I know with herbs, you were talking about having things that are accessible and easy to find, which I love, because so often you'll read through a book and it'll talk about something that's really obscure and hard to track down, and then you're like looking online and trying to source it, and it becomes really difficult. So I love that you put the focus on accessibility. So in terms of crystals, like what was your approach with that, and also with the animal themed deck with familiars? Like how did you pick what to include and what you were going to leave for later in terms of the elements?
Well, like I said, I start with a spreadsheet and I list like everything,
Yeah,
and I was cross-referencing. So in my
yeah,
digital book of shadows, it has like the animals and what they mean and like all the connections, you know? So
yeah,
I went through and chose like which ones I found most accessible and I thought
yeah,
people can easily access. Same with like crystals and stuff. And then from there, it was just kind of like deciding what was going to mean what, because there's
yeah,
always going to be crossover for
mhm,
meanings on crystals, on
yeah,
animal, like anything, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and it's very important that it was like very wide.
yeah,
So I tried to take the time to kind of utilize the different aspects and try to incorporate the different messages and
yeah,
try to have like a very well-rounded deck, because
yeah,
magic is not very balanced. It's kind of like everywhere,
yeah,
you know? It's not like just
yeah,
focused on healing. It's not just focused on
yeah,
empowerment, you know? So,
yeah. Yeah, there's a wide range of different applications, like you said, like herbs for energizing, herbs for relaxing, like, and that applies to crystals and to animals as well. Like, each of them have different properties, I mean, as you obviously very well know. And so it's so lovely that you've incorporated all of those elements. So it's not skewed in one direction. Like there's a really, it sounds like there's a really nice balance across the board with what you've included. That's so lovely. Oh, I love that so much. Um, yeah, like, so what was the biggest challenge in creating these decks for you?
oh gosh.
Good question.
Duplicated keywords and
Yeah.
like messages.
Yeah,
Because
I
I'm
get
like
that. I totally
writing
get that.
things and I'm like, oh God, I already have something for like energizing. You know, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so I have to like figure out what else I can use. But that's where like the benefit that like things can be multi-use comes in, because
Yeah.
it can cross over to something else. And I had kind of like an easy leeway, but
Yeah.
it was definitely like hard figuring out so that I didn't have duplicates. But I did
Yeah.
thankfully have my friend who's jumped in and helped me with all this. She was like searching like duplicates and like all this stuff for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
doing 3 decks at once
Yeah.
for that is already like, oh my gosh, it was a lot.
Yeah, it would be a lot, but I would imagine too at the same time is good because then you're absolutely sure you're not duplicating anything because you're doing it at the same time, so you can do that immediate cross-reference and just
I
be
mean,
like
there's
double
gonna be
clear.
like moon cards in each deck, but like there's
Yeah,
gonna be like different keywords or like different messages, and like
yeah,
I mean, there's gonna be like a energize yourself in like the herb deck, and then there's gonna be like invoke energy or something like kind of similar in
yeah,
like other decks, but not exactly.
yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, and then there's going to be some crossover in terms of the meanings of things. So, there's going to be similarities for sure. But yeah, that's amazing and so lovely to have some help with that too. Because I would imagine at some point it would get fairly overwhelming because you're so used to looking at everything so much, right? And sometimes it takes that outside perspective to help. I know I was working on my master's thesis years ago and it was all there, but I couldn't see the forest for the trees because I've been looking at it for like, a year and a half, 2 years at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So Dominic had me just go for a walk and he moved things around and then it made sense. Like it wasn't that it wasn't there, but having an extra set of eyes to help you figure it out can be really, really helpful. That's amazing. So what aspect of this sparked the most joy? Because we touched on challenges first. So what was the most joyful or most fun aspect of it?
Um, I mean, kind of like seeing them all together, like as I'm posting
Yeah,
like sample pictures and like things put
yeah,
together. Because like I have some cards that I've printed, but these aren't like
yeah,
the final drafts or anything. Like some
yeah,
messages
yeah,
are different and like all that. But it's always that point when it's like you get the sample or like
yeah,
you
yeah,
have like a handful created and you can make like a digital sample. Like
yeah,
it's like seeing your creation
yeah.
kind of.
That's so exciting. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that must be that must be quite heady, that moment of like seeing it in completion and out in front of you in a tangible sense, even if it's on the computer, right? Getting all those images together. And I know
you decks I have started on the computer, so that like to me is like you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, because I know we've talked about a lot of different ideas over the last couple of years around Sabbats and different things, and you've got so many amazing sources of inspiration for different themes and different decks. I'm always in awe of everything you're creating because it's really, truly magical. That's awesome. Yeah, that would be pretty incredible to see it all laid out like that. And I know you've had a few posts, I believe, on Instagram where you have all three cards together, and it just works so beautifully. And like there's a fluidity with that. Like, as you know, I love combining decks, and it's so lovely to see how the energy of different things can work together, especially where it's created as a kind of holistic 3-deck set as well, which is so amazing. That's wonderful. So
sure that each deck could still be used on its own, because I know not everyone's gonna want the whole collection or can afford the whole collection, you know. So
absolutely.
That was so important to me while creating the decks, to make each deck still accessible and very like wide range.
Absolutely, yeah, and I love that you offer that as an option. If you know you're really into the herbology deck and that's the one you want to focus on, you can just go with that, or with the fauna and familiars. Like it's so great because they can be used together, but they can also be used separately, which is so magical. I love that so much. Oh, that's so cool. So what was the process like now that you are, well, technically 5 decks in, but it's your third major Kickstarter project, right? So
I think it's
what's the process? Fourth Kickstarter, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. So
I know, I can't believe it either.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. So now that you're further along the process, how does that differ from, like, I've got your very first Inner Witch Oracle here. What was the process like with this one, and how does it differ with the decks that you're creating now?
Well, Kickstarter platform itself has changed a little bit, but the process of like creating the decks and stuff is still like all the same.
Yeah.
But when it came to like doing 3 decks in one campaign, that took a lot of like planning and like financial like foresight and things like that. Absolutely. So it was like a little challenge there, but I had my sign up page active for like months for the campaign, so people knew about it. I had like 700 signups or something.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
People might just be waiting to get paid or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it seemed to help with the sign up thing to create that buzz.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there was definitely a lot more excitement around the Practical Magic, because I mean it's Practical Magic, you know. But that helped me get my name known and like step in, and it's like amazing. There's people commenting on my Kickstarter like, I've backed all your Kickstarters, your products are so amazing, and I'm just like, oh my God. Someone said I'm their favorite creator, and I'm like, what? Like,
that's incredible. That's wonderful, and it's so great because now that you're further along in your deck creating journey, you have people that are following you and have been actively following your work. So I would imagine, like, with the first deck, it would be a little more precarious in terms of, like, I don't know what your following is like when it was released, but because it's the first thing, right, it's a little bit more uncertain. But now you do have that community and that support, which is really lovely and well earned as well, because what you create is really beautiful. Yeah, and speaking of the Oracle, maybe we can chat about that a little bit. I think, because this is the 2nd edition, right?
I was going to mention that.
Because I believe I missed the first one, and I was kicking myself and waiting with anticipation for you to release the 2nd edition, because I love Practical Magic, and that's one of the few things where I won't say I prefer the movie to the book, because I also love the book, but they're kind of 2 different things. Like, there's elements that are the same, but they're kind of 2 different mediums, and I love the movie every bit as much as I love the book, which almost never happens. Like, I'm such a stickler for film adaptation, so it's incredible. But
I compare them as like alternate realities.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I saw the movie years ago before I even realized that it was a book, because usually I will read the book first and then go see the movie. But for whatever reason, the book or the movie came first, and it's one of my all-time favorite films. I adore it. And then I read the book, and I was like, oh, it's actually quite different, but I don't actually mind that. It's lovely, and I've read all of her books, and they're lovely. And I think Alice Hoffman has actually reposted some of your stuff as well, from what I understand, which is so lovely. Yeah, that's talk about high praise. That's
Right.
wonderful. Yeah, so
So
cool.
you were mentioning that this is the second edition.
Yeah,
Did you ever see the first edition?
I think I saw it floating around social media, but I didn't have a copy
Almost
for myself.
embarrassed. So like my first edition was my first like deck ever, you know, and
Yeah.
like I didn't know about like mass printing, so I utilized like make playing cards, you know,
Yeah.
and I hand edged all the decks
Oh my
black,
goodness.
and
Wow.
I felt like it was very rushed, but it's in a tuck box.
Yeah.
But
That's
they're like numbered and signed. This is 99. There's
wow.
only 100 of these made.
Wow. That's why I had trouble tracking one down, because I remember missing the Kickstarter and then kicking myself and trying to track it down,
Yeah, this
and
is the
I
best
wasn't
they
able
didn't
to.
even go to Kickstarter. The first
Oh,
edition
that one
was
wasn't.
only pre-orders on like my website. Oh my
Oh, okay.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
I even have like a thank you card in here. The
Oh my goodness.
guidebook. Like it's so like tiny. Like I've grown so much.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, I think authors always say, like the first couple of drafts, it's one thing, and then what it eventually evolves into can be something very different. And I mean, I keep thinking like the first one had to be there in order for the second edition to be born, right? And to build up the following and everything else. And yeah, it's amazing. And I love that you included the thank you card. And oh my gosh.
This is all
Wow.
glossy. This is
Yeah.
matte. I mean, there's sides.
Yeah.
It's also got
That's
a
so
lot
special that
more
you.
cards.
Yes, absolutely. I was gonna say, I noticed that when you launched the Kickstarter for the second edition, I love that there's all of the different elements, and you've included, like with the tarot. I mean, there's so many things here, right? Like you've got the single card spreads, like a spread ideas, and then there's like witches self-care, which I can't wait to do, inner witch check-in, full moon connection, new moon connection. Like there's so many amazing, and then you've got all the element spreads, which are so lovely. Like there's so many incredible elements in this. So what?
I can't stop myself from creating. That's
Yeah.
the issue. I just keep going.
Oh, please,
And
please
even
don't
now
stop.
on
It's
the
lovely.
Kickstarter, I'm like, what else can I do? What else can I add? And there is something I want to add to the Kickstarter that I'm not 100% yet, but
Yeah.
my goal, I'll just share with you my plan. So I plan on having all three decks like in a box, like ding ding ding. But then I
Yeah.
wanted to make like possibly like a 3-in-1 guidebook to go like on top of the
Ooh,
box
that sounds
at no
incredible.
additional charge to all the whole like complete box
Wow,
backers.
that's very
Because it
generous.
was so last minute,
Yeah.
that's on me. But I originally wanted to release like a book, you know, with it. So,
Oh,
and I feel like offering it in the box set only is special
yeah.
because people have asked if they can buy the guidebooks by themselves, and I'm like, that's really weird, but no.
Yeah.
Because like that to me screams like you're gonna make illegal copies or something, or like
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. It's just very weird to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know like James R. Eads has an amazing guidebook that's for all, like both
I
the
just got
cosmetic
that in
and
the mail, and I was like, oh my god, this is what I was envisioning. And I was like,
yeah,
maybe I subconsciously saw this like a year ago on his Kickstarter and like didn't even
yeah.
like connect, you know?
But it's so lovely to have that reference text ready to go that covers everything, right? And
Yeah,
it's
as
all
opposed to
included
like
in one
have
book.
all
And
three
like,
guidebooks.
yeah,
That's like what I'm thinking. And I
yeah,
mean, it's a lot more work and it would
yeah,
push things back a little bit, I think. But if I like,
yeah,
I think I could do it. And I think I want
yeah,
to offer it. Like,
yeah. No, no, that sounds incredible. And you could always add it as an add-on too, if you wanted to, for Kickstarter exclusive kind of thing, because it's a lovely reference point too. I mean, I'm not sure why you would need the guidebook if you didn't actually have the deck. So the idea of that being exclusive to the box set is actually really special, because then it's kind of like a limited edition idea and all of that. Yeah,
I was even
that's
thinking
amazing.
it'd be cool to have like, I mean, here's like a sample.
Yeah.
Because I have some extra decks. Like 3 decks, and then this would be like the book, like on top. And then you can even like
Beautiful.
flip it so it's like sideways. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
it's gonna happen. It has to happen.
That's such a great idea. I love that so much. And it's nice because when it's a larger format book, then you can see the visuals so much better too, because like I know with the James R. Eads ones, the Cosmic Visions, or I'm not sure what the name of the book is, but it's with the Prisma Visions and Cosmovisions, and it's the visuals are so much bigger.
Cover that he came out with, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so nice to be able to see the more full-size illustrations as well, because you see all the little details, which is really beautiful. Yeah. That's an incredible idea. I love it.
So I just gotta get myself in gear, I guess.
That's amazing.
I haven't mentioned it or anything. I just need to email my printer, and I'm sure they can make it happen. Everything, you know.
Yeah. So how did you find the printer that you're working with, and is it the same printer that you used for the Inner Witch Oracle and Inner Witch Tarot?
So with my Inner Witch Oracle, I had a really big issue that my printer like started ghosting me and like stopped talking to me for a while, and then it like really delayed things.
Yeah.
So for the tarot, I found a new printer.
Yeah.
And I was gonna use them again this time, but they've been really bad at communication. So I have a new printer, and I think it's actually James's printer.
Nice.
So like
That's
I know that the quality's there.
Yeah.
You know. And
absolutely.
They've been responding like the next day, like constantly. And they're like, they sent me this like sample box of like card stocks to like check. And then so like I have like a few like sample cards of like different like card stock and like edges and stuff. And I'm like, that is dedication. That means they want my like service and like, you know,
they want your business. Yeah, that's wonderful.
I'm gonna be using them, and I plan on probably using them in the future too. They have been sent me like sample cards for mini decks, so I can get ready for those.
Yeah, because we were just talking about that because we were talking about potentially having a mini deck series. Are you open to chatting about that?
Yeah, I wanted to do mini versions of the Practical Magic, Inner Witch Oracle and Tarot.
Yeah.
And introduce like a matching Lenormand because they're all like the same size.
So fabulous. That's wonderful. And what a lovely set too. That's such a great idea. That's absolutely fabulous. How did you find a good printer? Sorry, go ahead.
I did design like rune cards too. I thought about incorporating because they're black and gold.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't know if it really matches with the decks or not. But yeah, that's what I have planned next. I think is mini versions because everyone seems to want them. I've had a lot of questions about them. Yeah. So. Yeah,
they're really handy for travel or if you're
And maybe I'll do like the printing of the tarot also because I'm down to like I think like 30 or 25 tarot decks left and I'm out.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be really because I know from what I understand, when you're printing decks, the more you print, it becomes more cost effective. So if you were to put the mini decks in, I don't know if it changes if you have to have, like, how does that work? Like, if you're printing a whole bunch of decks, does it all have to be exactly the same thing, or is it okay to add different sizes, or like, how does that work?
That's where I found out during this Kickstarter because I'm doing the 3 decks.
Yeah.
They do like the pricing per like printing. If that makes sense, each deck.
Yeah.
So like 300 of this deck will cost this much, even though it's like the same size and everything. And then like, so I originally got quoted like 500 for each deck, I think. And I don't think I'm gonna need nearly that much. So I like overquoted, you know. And they told me that they can pretty much do any amount. When in the past, printers that I've worked with said the minimum order quantity is 500.
Yeah.
And that's like not really doable for a lot of people.
No. That's a lot. And that's a lot for you to have to store after the fact too. It's not like you have a warehouse out back that you can just toss any extra decks in, right? Like it becomes a storage issue as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's gonna break down to each deck cost and then like it'll be different based on each like element. So when I email my printer, I'm like, oh, this is like the base deck that I want, like size and then I'm like, okay, can you tell me how much it's going to be to add foil to the edges, add spot UV to the
Mm-hmm.
box,
Yeah.
add, you know what I mean? And then so it breaks it down, and then that way
Yeah.
I'm able to like build my stretch goals.
Yeah.
And you know, so
Absolutely.
there's a
Yeah,
lot
it's helpful to have that information. Yeah, lots of elements that go in, lots of components that go into it for sure. That's well, I'm glad that you found that a printer that you like. And in terms of the additional things that you do, like where do you get the card stands printed? Is a connection through the printer? Does the printer do those? Like, how do you source these?
I actually I hate to say it, but I found them on Alibaba. You
Okay.
know that like website. But that's where like I'm getting my journals printed too. It's easy bulk
Mm-hmm.
printing for
Mm-hmm.
like wholesalers and stuff. So it's
Yeah.
better for me, I guess, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
that's who I usually reach out to for when I want to create something. And like so for like the journals, I looked up like journals and
Yeah.
like I found like this like it was just like a faux leather and it had like a band on it. And then I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I want to do this. I don't want the band. I want foil. I want it like engraved. Can you do this?
Yeah.
You know? And then some people are like, no. And then some people are
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, send us a file. And then so it's just a lot of like back and forth
Yeah.
sourcing, checking things. But I found
Absolutely.
a good person on Alibaba, um, and they're going to be doing something else I asked them to do too. I don't remember what it was. I think the coins or something is like a
Okay.
later goal.
Because there's that's the last stretch goal, right? I made notes. Yeah, so the yet to be unlocked stretch goals. It was a 3-card wooden holder, animal soapstone totem, selenite crystal towers, and then a grimoire divination coin, right? Those are the final. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, divination coins are so beautiful. It's such a
I
nice.
know I really wanted to incorporate that. I don't know, I
Hmm.
designed it and everything, and now I'm like, dang, okay, well, if it doesn't get funded, maybe like after the campaign, I'll be like, add it on for like, you know, make
Yeah,
it happen.
well, you can have it as a retail option on your website as well, which would be really lovely too. Yeah. So how did the process differ between creating your Inner Witch Oracle and your Inner Witch Tarot? Like I know that the Inner Witch Tarot is kind of loosely based on practical magic. It's not as well. My impression was it wasn't as much of a direct reference. There are definitely reference points, but even if you weren't familiar with practical magic, you could use the deck and be immersed in the witchcraft element of it. Yeah, which is so lovely. So yeah, what was the creation process like? Like, was it easier to create the tarot after having done the oracle? Was it something completely separate? Like, what was that process like for you?
So I've realized after creating, this is my like fourth, I guess, oracle technically.
Yeah,
Um, I prefer doing oracles because I think it's that like creative flow in me
yeah,
where tarot is very structured and it's like
yeah,
you can't just put a random image, like it needs to make sense to
yeah,
what the card means. Where like
yeah,
oracle I can build whatever I want.
yeah,
The oracle deck came to me pretty easily.
yeah,
I mean, I did watch the movie like over and over and over, you know, but
yeah,
and read the book. But the tarot, it was a bit more difficult trying to incorporate those elements. I mean, like you said, there are some, but that's why I
yeah,
tried to lean more towards like the witchcraft side
yeah,
of that.
yeah. That's I would imagine that the structure of tarot would be a little bit more restrictive in terms of like what you would need to include versus just being able to have like a free form approach to what you're doing. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, and I love like you've taken the tarot and you kept it to this traditional structure, but you've also taken steps to make it your own as well, which I really appreciate. Like I like that you've changed the titles for some of the cards. Like the magician is now the witch, which is so great. And um, also, this emperor card is my favorite of all time. I
Me
adore this.
too.
It's
That was one of my
absolutely
first cards I created.
fantastic.
I think
Yeah.
the first one I did was the Hermit, and then I did the Emperor.
Okay. Yeah, this is such a fantastic card. It's really lovely. And I love that the Hierophant is the Book of Shadows. Like, that's incredible.
So
That whole
it's
idea of sharing
funny
wisdom and
that reference because the Book of Shadows, it's also in the other deck, you know, as like the
yeah,
grimoire. And to me, like, it might sound weird, but like these decks are in that book. if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like, I don't
Yeah, absolutely. No, no, and I love that there's cross-referencing between your decks. Like they all kind of inform and support each other, right? So they're separate, but they're also connected, and there's elements to be found, like little clues in each of them that tie them all together so beautifully. It's really, really amazing. I love the care and attention and focus that you put in, and like this chariot, I mean, it's fantastic. Um, yeah, and I love that the Wheel of Fortune is cycles. Like that's such a lovely way of looking at that particular card. Like it's just, and Death also has the rebirth reference on it, which is great because I know this is a card that scares a lot of people. Because you pull the Death card, oh, it's literal death. Well, it's not really so much about that. It's about evolution and change and rebirth. And yeah, it's a really cool approach. This is how yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, they really do inform each other, and it's lovely.
Powerful, but sticking to Rider-Waite while like
Yeah,
not the magic,
yeah,
and it wasn't as difficult as like I thought it was gonna be making
yeah,
it, but I still did like have hurdles, especially with the air, the swords. I was like, oh my
yeah,
god, the nightmare.
yeah. Swords are tricky. I love that the Devil card is Temptations, though, because that's such a part of that particular card. Like it's, yeah, I'm totally fangirling, but like this is fantastic, and I love too that with your core cards, the page becomes the initiate, and the knight is the apprentice, and then the queen is the teacher, and the king is the sovereign. Like that's such a lovely kind of gender-free way
Yeah.
to approach the feeling of the cards because I mean, I don't know, the more I work with tarot, the more I move away from traditional gendered roles because I think part of the magic of tarot, for what I believe, it should be accessible to everyone, and everyone should be able to see themselves represented in the cards. We all have a little bit of Queen of Cups in us, and King of Wands, and Knight of Pentacles, and, you know, Page of Cups. Like, we all have that capacity within us. So when you take away traditional gendered roles, it allows everyone to be able to see themselves represented in the cards, and I think that that's so powerful, and I really appreciate that you did that because it is one more step towards making the practice accessible for everyone, right? Which is so beautiful.
Yeah, that was my main intention. Like when I was creating it, I wanted it to be gender neutral, very diverse, culturally inclusive, like, but not like, I didn't want to show like people because even like that can be ableist, that can be like body shaming, like, you know. So I was just, I like you said, I want it very accessible to everyone.
Yeah. No, I love that you've incorporated that element. It's so beautiful. So if you were to take all 5 of these creations and mix them together, what would that look like? Would you just like toss them all together and then see what comes up, or would you pull one card from each deck, or like how would you blend all of those together if you wanted to?
Originally I wanted to create the tarot and the oracle. I mean, they can obviously still be used together.
Yeah.
But I wanted them to be mixed and used together. But the different backings, I'm like, I don't know. I still have yet to do that myself, but I want.
Yeah.
And for the new decks, I feel like all 3 can be mixed together and you kind of pull. Or you can utilize, like, each position is like, oh, what guidance do I have from my familiars today? And what stone can help me through the day? And, like, what herb can I utilize in, like, cooking or, like, you know, just different aspects. But I do think, too, that the practical magic and these decks will still work really well together.
Oh, they would, yeah, absolutely. And I love that there is that grimoire connection point with everything, right? It kind of is that connection point that brings it all together so beautifully. Yeah, that's lovely. I love that all the different elements work together in that way. And in addition to decks, you also have a website. I think we're running out of, you know, we've got a few minutes left, but I just wanted to give a shout out to your Patreon. You've got an incredible Patreon that you've set up with all kinds of spreads and amazing content. It's really, really lovely. And then you also have your website, and you create like handcrafted candles like this one, which I've burned to the bottom, and I have my little tiger's eye that you included, which is so lovely. Found it hidden at the bottom, and I've got it out now, and I'm going to put it on my altar. And there's so many beautiful fresh herbs in here, and the scents that you use are beautiful. And then there's also like the card stands and so many other incredible elements. So is that all based on your website, or do you still have an Etsy site set
I
up,
do
or how do
have
you manage that?
Etsy. All my stuff is on my website, but not
Okay.
everything is on Etsy.
Okay.
I don't know. I get a lot more traffic on Etsy for some reason though.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, everything is
Yeah.
available on my website, but only some stuff is on Etsy. But I still have my
Yeah.
website up because Patreon members have like a special like discount shop.
Ooh,
That's
that's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, that's super special. Yeah, because you have the Patreon under Grounded by the Moon, and then your website is groundedbythemoon.com, and then folks can also find you here at Grounded by the Moon, obviously. That's so. Last question for you before we run out of time. Maybe not the last one, but one of the last ones. How did you settle on Grounded by the Moon as your kind of tag name, company name? Yeah, where did that come from?
I don't know. So I originally was doing like a business 6 years ago that's called like Universal Vibe, like
Okay.
SOUL, Universal, and it was all about like connecting people, and it was like a play on words, you know. So
Yep.
after I stepped away from that business and started working with like the witch and
Mhm.
like invoking my actual powers, and
Yeah.
I I started working with the moon and like really, I mean, it all kind of like I started back at the basics. You know, like I'd
Yep.
always been like practicing, but like after I stopped that business, I like decided like, oh, I'm gonna dive fully into my magic. I'm gonna go back to the basics, and I'm like grounding. That
Yep.
was like a basic, you know, and like connecting to the moon, and it's
Yep.
just like it just kind of happened. It kind of like fit, and I'm like, because I would ground, or I still do, like before every like moon ritual,
Yep.
and like so it just kind of fit, and
Yep.
being connected to the different phases of the
Yep.
moon, it
Oh, I
reflects.
love that.
So there's like multiple reasons.
Yeah, I love that. I love that there's so many elements that come into that name. That's wonderful. Yeah, it's a great way to encompass kind of all of the work that you do. It's really lovely because you always include cards and spreads for new moon and full moon in with your decks. I don't know if it's in every single one, but I just noticed them as I was going through these decks, and that's such a lovely practice. I don't know about you, but I've started paying attention to moon cycles and which astrological transit is happening during that time, whether it's like a new moon in Cancer or a full moon in Aquarius, and it really shifts how I experience that particular cycle. And I tend to be more comfortable with full moon cycles than with new moon cycles, but then again, it depends on the month. But I was also born at an almost full moon. So it's interesting when you start breaking those things down and looking at, okay, how does this relate to my personal experience or my cycle? What cycle the moon was in when I was born? Like there's so many different components. So I love that you include that in all of your decks too, just the symbols and the reference points and everything else, because it adds a really special element to working with the decks. That's really lovely.
I mean, my
Well,
main
thank you.
goal for everything was kind of starting this company and
Yeah,
doing the decks, and is I want to be able to share my magic and my knowledge
yeah,
to all those people. Because I remember growing up and like I didn't have anybody, or I didn't have anyone to reach
yeah,
out to, or I didn't have like, I don't know, just things that are accessible, and being like part of the LGBTQ. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, I just feel that there's a lot more I can offer.
Yeah. Well, and it's so beautiful too because even if you know nothing about tarot or witchcraft or any of these practices, if you pick up one of your decks, it's so full of information and knowledge and learning. And so it's a really beautiful way to carry it, to bring these practices to anyone who is interested in learning, right? There's an accessibility there and an availability that is so lovely, right? It's not, you don't have to search for an occult shop or try and find esoteric knowledge through different things. I mean, it's such an excellent starting point for that for anyone who has an interest in these areas. So it's really beautiful. And I love that you've included so much with each of the decks that it really is a beautiful starting point for your practice. It's lovely. Yeah, it's very, very cool. I think we're running out of time. Oh, yeah, very quickly here. So I will wrap this up with you. Thank you so much for joining me, Joseph. This was an absolute pleasure. It's always such a treat to chat with you, but especially during the live. This has been really, really lovely. And so anyone who's interested in the Kickstarter, it is on until August 11th. So you still have a few more weeks to back the decks and explore Joseph's project. And you post regularly with the cards too on your Instagram too. So that's such a great reference point. Oh yeah. Well, thank
Thank
you
you
so
for
much for
having
joining
me.
us. It's been so lovely. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.